Please share where you're watching from and consider subscribing to the channel. I'm changing names because I still don't sleep right. At the time of the attack, I was 19, almost 20. Gavin was 27. We had a huge chow chow named Oli, his dog, and my cat, Sterling. We rented this 3-bedroom house that always felt too big when Gavin was gone and too small when he was home. A few months earlier, we'd let a friend, Lacey, crash with us, and she took advantage. Ate our food, used our stuff, didn't pay rent. She left, but the mess stayed, like a film over the place. Gavin got back from a 3 to 4 week work trip, and he was wrong. Zoned out wrong. I'd ask him to take out the garbage, and 5 minutes later he'd blink at me like I was speaking underwater. He couldn't keep a thought in his head. I was barely hanging on, too. I have BPD, and that week every sound felt like broken glass. I kept telling myself he was jet-lagged or depressed. We'd gone out with his mom 2 days earlier, and she was worried, the kind of tight worry moms try to hide with small talk. Gavin used to say he only had OCD, but I knew this wasn't OCD. This was something darker. The day it happened, we grabbed takeout and sat on the couch. He was playing Mario Kart. I was painting my nails, cheap red that smelled like a headache. He paused, looked at me with pupils blown wide, and said, perfectly flat, "Lacey put a curse on my family." The air went sideways. I suggested a cold shower. It had helped him earlier that week to reset. He muttered to himself, walking to the bathroom. The hairs lifted on my neck. I stood up and asked, trying to sound casual, if I could call his mom, maybe invite her for supper. He stared, and then he snapped, yelling that all he needed was me. The bathroom door slammed. Something inside me whispered, "You are not safe." I stepped into the hall and called his mom. She picked up, and I started rambling. Then Gavin came out of the bathroom naked, soaked, shivering, eyes wrong, and shouted at Oli to discipline me. "Attack her," he screamed. Oli was trained as my guard dog. He barked, confused, whining. Gavin's voice got lower. "Lacey, you're gonna pay for what you did." He was looking right at me, but he didn't see me. He saw her. I ran to the bedroom, still on the phone with his mom. Gavin kicked the door off its cheap hinges like it was cardboard, grabbed me by the hair, and smashed my head into the mirrored closet. The mirror spiderwebbed, and I tasted copper. He ripped the phone from my hand and hurled it. "I'm going to kill you," he said, like it was a schedule item. I bolted for the front door. He caught me in the kitchen and locked his forearm under my chin, crushing my throat. Spots burst in my vision. Sterling was on the table, puffed up, eyes saucer-wide. I clawed his wrists, dug my nails in, kicked backwards, anything. My brain did that weird split thing. One part begging, the other cataloging. Stove off, knives in the block, floor sticky from last night. He hissed in my ear, "Do you know what it's like to have unspeakable things done to you?" The words hit me like a gut punch. I'd been assaulted a year before, and he knew every messy detail, every night I'd cried into his t-shirt. Hearing him twist it, my trauma, made my stomach heave. He threw me down and planted his foot on the side of my face, testing pressure like he was about to stomp a bug. For a second our eyes met. There was nothing there. Dilated pupils swallowing the iris, dead ocean. "Admit it, Lacey," he chanted. "Admit what you did." I started apologizing, lying, sobbing, bargaining. I would have said anything. He loosened. I scrambled up, bolted, fumbled the damn screen door, cursed it, ripped it open, and sprinted out into February air that knifed my lungs. I ran house to house in just shorts and a sweater, barefoot, screaming. 2 doors wouldn't open. A porch light flicked off when they saw me. Bare legs, blood, crazy eyes. "Great, thanks." Then I heard it, Oli screaming. Not barking, screaming. I folded on the sidewalk and howled back. "Gavin, leave him alone." Some neighbors came running, older couple, flannel robes, raw concern. They pulled me inside and called the police. I called my mom with shaky hands from a stranger's phone. Gavin killed the dog. He tried to kill me. It felt like hours, but eventually 5 or 6 police cars boxed in our street. "Guns out!" A megaphone voice ordered him to come out with his hands up. He walked out naked, streaked with blood. Someone draped a blanket over him, cuffed him, stuffed him into a car. A young officer came to talk to me while others went inside. "How many dogs?" one asked. "1. And a cat." "Your dog is in the bathtub," he said, careful like the word might break me. "He's deceased." Later they said Gavin killed Oli in the living room, then filled the tub and put him in like a ritual, like a horror scene you can smell, metallic blood, feces, cloying steam. I asked about Sterling. They couldn't find him. My brain tunneled. "Find my cat," I kept repeating, rocking. They asked where he hid, under the bed, behind the hamper, top of the closet, and finally found him alive, feral with terror, attacking their gloves. They blocked the worst of it, but I still saw too much. Sterling was on the bed, crying in that throaty, broken sound cats make. I scooped him up, shaking. As I walked out, Gavin's mom pulled up. She looked at me, searched my arms for Oli, and asked, "Where's Oli?" I said, "Gavin killed him." She collapsed. The sound she made lives in my bones. 2 weeks later, Sterling and I were on a plane to my mom's. The court case dragged for over 2 years. I learned things I didn't want to. He had loaded our guns. There was a baseball bat involved. He got 10 months of house arrest. 10 months. He still tries to contact me, even now, blaming me for not getting him help earlier, like I didn't spend months dragging him to showers, to meals, to sunlight. And the sickest part, the part one hate admitting, is that some nights I believe him. I replay every sign I ignored, the muttering, the wide pupils, the way his hands shook over Mario Kart like he was holding a ghost. I light a candle for Oli. I hold Sterling till he squirms free. I lock my doors twice. And when the house goes quiet, I hear a voice that sounds like mine whispering, "You should have." I was already with my future husband when I met his cousin, and that's where I screwed up. We clicked too easily. We both had matching ghosts, addiction, anorexia, like we were comparing scars in the mirror and nodding. We'd talk on the phone for hours about white-knuckling through the shakes, about counting almonds like rosary beads. When we met up, we'd eat dinner, in that sick way where you pick at lettuce and drink coffee until your hands tremble. We saw a movie once, and in the car afterward he leaned across the console and kissed me. It wasn't fireworks, it was desperation with chapstick. I pulled away, decided right there it had to stop. I told my boyfriend, the man who'd become my husband, about the kiss. He was painfully understanding. I didn't tell him the cousin took rejection like a lit match. Time passed. I convinced myself the cousin and I could be friends. Two starving people enabling each other's hunger. We went to the same diner over and over, counting calories with our eyes while pretending we were normal. After a couple of meetups, the truth cracked through. It wasn't healthy. For me, for him, for my relationship. He asked to see me once more, closure, and like an idiot, I said yes. We met at our place. He talked about his apartment and job like bullet points on a pitched deck, steady, dependable, a man who could take care of me. The way he said it made my stomach knot. I told him I wanted to go home. It was late. He drove, but instead of my place, he turned into the forest preserve. All the lights were off, that deep Chicago suburb dark that swallows your breath. Empty parking lot, bare trees scratching the sky. My skin went electric. He killed the engine and turned toward me. "We're meant for each other," he said. His voice had that aching Midwestern warmth, but it dragged something cold behind it. I focused on being calm. "You know I'm engaged," I said. "We're just friends." He had a history of getting into fights, nothing prison level, but enough that I'd heard the family gossip. I kept my voice soft, hands visible, nerves singing. His face crumpled, like I'd yanked a string inside him. "I love you," he said, and it sounded like a threat. I put a hand on the door handle. He slid his arm around my neck and pressed, hard, right into the right side where the pulse beats. Not a choke, not some clumsy headlock. Precise. Wrestler precise. He'd been one in high school. I looked straight ahead at the black windshield, and the little smear my breath left on the glass. Then the world pinholed. I woke up to a hard rap on the window and a flashlight drenching the car. A police officer's voice cut the night. "You two okay?" My head tilted, slow motion. I was confused, heavy, nauseous. There was vomit on my shirt, and my jeans were wet. Carotid compression will do that. Flip the breaker in your brain, and let your body embarrass you on the way down. The cousin leaned over me, waving awkwardly at the officer like we were teenagers caught making out. "We're fine," he said quickly. "She's drunk." I wasn't drunk. I was terrified. The officer's eyes tracked my face, my clothes, the way my hands shook. He asked for our names. The cousin's jaw was clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grind. The officer handed him a ticket, something small, maybe parking after hours, and lingered. He looked at me again. "Ma'am, you okay?" I heard my voice from very far away. "I want to go home now." I said it carefully, with him listening. I figured if I said it with the cop there, the cousin would have to drive me straight home. Names taken. Eyes on us. A tiny leash of accountability. The officer stepped back. The cousin started the car. We pulled out of the lot, tires whispering over gravel. He didn't say a word. His silence was a room with no doors. I didn't know if he'd been trying to kill me, or if his broken heart and broken brain had fused into something reckless. But I could still feel where his arm had pressed my arteries shut, the exact line of pressure, like a bruise under the skin. The body knows the difference between rough affection and a power flex aimed at the fuse box. He dropped me at my place. I walked in on stiff legs, washed my shirt in the sink, stared at my pale face over the running water. I didn't tell my boyfriend right away. The shame came first. The voice in my head that said, "You agreed to meet him. You kissed him once. You made this mess and nearly got yourself killed in it. Trauma is a mirror that always tilts toward you." When I finally told, he listened and went quiet in that way that's worse than yelling. He said he believed me. I could see his eyes race through all the Thanksgivings, the birthdays, the next time we'd be in a room with his cousin pretending nothing had happened. I saw the calculation of love versus blood. I saw the cousin a couple more holidays, and he never spoke directly to me again. He hovered in perimeters, laughing too loud, pretending conversations like fences would keep out what he'd done. He never apologized. He never even tried to explain. Maybe he filed it under misunderstanding, to sleep at night. Predators do that, rename the thing they did so they can keep breathing. There are pieces I didn't say out loud, then or now. How before he took us to the preserve he drove the long way along the lake, like he was giving himself time to decide. How his "I love you" had a blade hidden under the bow. How my body reacted, the little death of blackout, the humiliations, the sour vomit, the hot shame of wet jeans. How his fingers trembled after the officer left, and how he squeezed the steering wheel to stop it. How I kept my mouth shut in that parking lot, because I was more afraid of what he'd do if I told the truth than I was of my own anger at myself. People will want a moral. Here's what I've got. If someone with a history of violence tells you they love you after you told them you're engaged, believe the danger, not the sentence. If a man practiced and wraps an arm around your neck, it is not a hug delivered wrong. It is a choice. If an officer knocks and you get air back in your lungs, that is grace arriving with a flashlight and a citation book. I replay that night like a film I'm sick of, but it still runs. The dead parking lot, the preserved black, the officer's knock, his voice, the way reality snapped back into place at the sound. I think about carotid compression like it's a vocabulary word pinned to my chest. I think about the body's trifecta of surrender, darkness, vomit, urine, and how shame tries to make survival small. Chicago taught me the language of winter, frozen breath, salt crunching under tires, the way the lake goes slate and mean. My voice still carries that flat vowel when I say, I'm fine, but I'm not naive anymore. Love is not supposed to feel like a hand on your throat to prove a point. It's not supposed to leave you scrambling to explain why you didn't scream louder, or sooner, or at all. If that officer hadn't shown up right then, I don't know if I'd be here to tell you this. Maybe the cousin would have kept pressing until the world went completely black. Maybe he would have convinced himself I asked for it, that I went to sleep, that none of it was his fault. He's wrong, and I'm done being polite about it. This happened in Tempe, Arizona, not far from Mill Avenue, where all the bars spit neon onto the sidewalk and everyone pretends they're fine. I was bar hopping with friends, drunk in that sloppy, floaty way where your feet feel like borrowed shoes. I've got this terrible habit of wandering when I drink, some dumb moth instinct that thinks every dark street is a porch light. And that night I drifted away from the group like a balloon someone forgot to tie down. By the time I realized I was alone, my phone was dead. Perfect. I picked a direction and walked like I knew what I was doing, which I definitely didn't. Later I learned my friend's house was 7, maybe 8 miles away from where I was stumbling. At the time, I had beer math in my head. Everything is like 20 minutes when you're lit. The streets were empty and echoing. Every once in a while a car hissed by, and I'd get a flash of myself in a window. Your typical suburban white boy, not big or scary, wearing a stupid grin like I was in on a joke no one else knew. I cut across a dead lot, stepped back onto the road, and that's when a sedan swerved hard and stopped in front of me. Not just pulled over, blocked me. The driver's door cracked, and I saw him. Big dude, mean looking at first glance, tattoos creeping up his forearms, wearing a hoodie and baggy shorts. Bandage on one arm, thick and fresh. There was a pistol tucked into his waistband, not hiding, just there like a wallet. My heart did that dry swallow thing, but I was too drunk to process danger right. Some people get scared or angry when they're cornered. Me? I waved. Hey man, what's good? I actually smiled. I still cringe thinking about it. He squinted at me, brow folding like he couldn't decide if I was bait or insane. He said something and I missed it over the little wind. I went, huh, like an idiot. He repeated clearer, where you going? Trying to get to my buddy's place, I said. Phone's dead. I'm lost as hell. He paused, eyes flat for a beat like a coin on a table, then said, get in. And I did. I walked around and slid into the passenger seat of a stranger's car at 2 a.m. in Tempe, while he had a visible gun. My drunk brain called that problem solved. The car smelled like sweat, blunt wraps, a little blood metal. Up close I saw more details. The bandage was taped hasty, hospital white against brown skin. His hands were big, knuckles scabbed. He drove without saying much, and I started giving directions from memory that was basically lies mixed with confidence. I get talkative when I drink, a friendly golden retriever with opinions. I started chatting about nothing, the bars, the weather, my major, my friends. The more I talked, the more his jaw loosened. He told me he'd just gotten out of the hospital. Someone shot him in the arm. He flicked the bandage with a little wince, like proof. Then he added matter of fact that his girl broke up with him over it. She was sick of the gang shit, sick of him getting into it. He laughed, no humor. Said he was out driving around because he was pissed off and looking to rob somebody. That's when my buzz tripped over itself. I could feel the 200 in my wallet like it got heavier. I pictured him parking somewhere dark and telling me to empty my pockets, maybe on my knees, maybe with the gun mouth cold on the back of my head. Instead of panicking, I did what drunk me does. I kept talking. Damn man, that's rough, I said softly like we were in a therapy session. Hospital breakup, all that at once, that's a lot. He watched the road. We drifted through pockets of sodium orange light. He said he rapped sometimes. Wanted to make it for real. I told him he should go for it. I meant it. People laugh at that part, but I did. The way he talked about beats felt more alive than anything else. He tapped the steering wheel like a metronome. In about 15 minutes, miracle of wrong turns that turned right, we ended up outside my friend's house. This is the part where any rational person exits the vehicle, says thanks for the ride, and gets inside fast, but my drunk logic insisted that favors are a currency. I felt like I owed him. So I asked, you want to come in and smoke? He looked at me for a long second like I'd offered him a parachute he hadn't asked for, then nodded. Bet. My friends had been back for a while, playing music in the back bedroom, the one with the huge safe visible in the closet, fat and smug. I led the guy down the hall, nervous all of a sudden, hearing my pulse in my ears. The room went quiet like a needle lift when we stepped in. Everyone took in the bandage, the tattoos, the strangeness of him. We did the awkward introductions. He kept one hand near his waist like muscle memory, then without warning, he reached into his waistband, pulled the pistol, and set it on top of the safe. The room shifted. Not panic, something like respect and terror braided together. He said nothing, just rested it there like a cat curling up on a warm appliance. My friends glanced at me, the what the actual fuck look, eyebrows near the ceiling, mouths tight. I gave them the please be cool we are in a situation look back. We rolled up. The first inhale burned in that sweet way, oiled the edges of the moment. The guy leaned back and started talking about music again, about rhyme patterns, about a hook he couldn't quite catch. It wasn't small talk, it was him bleeding a little truth. He was funny in flashes, and when he laughed, the meanness in his eyes unclenched. He asked what was in the safe. My buddy said, nothing you need, half joke, half prayer. The guy smirked. Respect. He didn't touch it. We sat like that for a while. We'd glow, bass heavy, the gun sitting on the safe like a black exclamation point at the edge of the sentence. I kept thinking about how easily he could just pick it up, point, say open it. We'd be done. It would take 10 seconds to change all our lives. Instead, he passed the blunt like a gentleman, told a story about his girl throwing his clothes off a third-floor balcony, talked about dyeing his hair for a video, about a verse he wrote in the hospital, numbed on 4 painkillers, writing on the back of a discharge form. The bandage bled through a pink bloom. He flexed his hand, winced, shook it off. He kept his voice low, sometimes almost tender. Every so often his face would go flat and far away, like he was watching himself from the ceiling. After maybe 30 minutes, he stood, nodded at all of us, walked to the safe, picked up the gun, tucked it back into his waistband, and said, I'm out. My buddy said, be cool, man, soft and sincere. He gave this half shrug, half bow, and left. We sat in silence for a long beat. Then the room exhaled all at once. Somebody said, bro. Someone else said, dude. We started laughing nothing laughs, the kind that shake out the leftover fear. My buddy opened the closet and touched the safe like it might be hot. It was stupid and human and perfect. I sank into the couch and felt my body again. The high was different now, sharper, cleaner, like I could hear the highway 3 blocks over. I walked him out to the door. He looked at me dead on. I was gonna rob somebody, he said, like he was telling me the weather. Maybe you. I don't know. He sighed through his teeth, a little whistle. But y'all were cool. Yeah, I said. It felt too small for the moment, but it's what I had. Stay safe. He cracked a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, then slid into the car and disappeared down the block, taillights blinking red like a heartbeat. I'd almost forgotten this until a friend reminded me on a call the other day. It snapped back like a rubber band. I was 7 or 8, small, stubborn, bad at bedtime. We'd just moved to America and were renting the top portion of a regular suburban house. Nothing fancy. Beige siding, patchy lawn, a mailbox that leaned like it was tired. Another tenant lived downstairs with a sliding glass door that faced the backyard. The neighborhood felt safe in that bland, brochure way, cul-de-sacs, porch lights, the distant sizzle of sprinklers when the sun went down. 3 or 4 houses down lived the triplets, my first friends in this new country. Every evening I'd shuffle over with a cheap flashlight I never turned on, and stay until 9 or 10. Then my older brother, 11, maybe 12, would walk over and collect me like I was library property. He was a prankster and a show-off with a soft center he pretended didn't exist. I thought he was too cool for me. He thought I was too dumb to cross the street alone. We were both a little right. One night, he came to get me as usual. Purple light fading out of the sky, that thin summer darkness that makes you think you've got more time than you do. We started walking back, talking trash about nothing, school, cartoons, who cheated at tag, when he kept glancing over his shoulder. I didn't clock it at first. Then he shoved me, hard, off the sidewalk and into the narrow space between 2 houses. Get down, he said, voice flat. He was not joking. Each house had a big wood fence around the backyard, tall enough to make you feel penned in. Our place didn't. Our backyard was open like a mouth. He crouched and made me crouch with him, the dirt smelling like wet wood and old leaves. Walk behind the houses, he said quietly. I think someone's following us. I wanted to laugh it off, to call him out for a bit. This is the same brother who once told me our sister drove her car into the ocean. He could sell you anything with a straight face. But then he looked at me, really looked, and I shut up. Whatever calm I had left drained right out my feet. We crab walked along the fence line. When I finally turned and looked back, because of course I looked, my heart did a weird, cold somersault. A man had followed us behind the houses. He was a few yards away near another fence, standing in that awkward, not supposed to be here way. Black hoodie with the hood up. Black sweatpants. White sneakers flashing ghost bright in the dusk. And his jaw hung open. Not parted. Not slack. Open. Like he'd been about to yell, and the sound never came out. I had crystal clear eyesight then, before the health stuff started, and I could see it with awful clarity. The whole bottom half of his face looked wrong. I don't know if it was a medical thing, drugs, something broken. Back then, my brain flipped straight to demon. Adult me hates that word, but child me decided the devil had suburbs. I must have made a noise because my brother leaned into me, whispering through his teeth, "Don't look. Run on my count." He was shaking, and that scared me more than the man. My brother didn't shake. 3, he said. 2. 1. We ran. Sprinted the narrow dirt track behind the houses, tripped over hose lines and old bricks, banged our knees, didn't look back. By the time our place came into view, I could taste pennies in my mouth and my legs felt like wet noodles. We didn't have a fence. The backyard yawned open. The downstairs tenant's sliding door was right there, the one that never quite caught unless you yanked. We tore across the grass, grabbed the handle, hauled it, and slid inside hard enough to rattle the glass. Lock. 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 I looked up through the glass at the yard, and he was there, far enough that we could pretend he wasn't close, close enough that there was no pretending. Just standing. Staring. That impossible jaw. My brother and I both went small, like if we made ourselves tiny, he'd lose the scent. We ran upstairs. Told my sister. Told my mom. My dad was on a work trip, so there was no immediate thunderstorm of dad anger to make it better. Mom checked the doors, turned on lights we didn't need, peered out the curtains like she could scare the night back with a look. The world went quiet again, too quiet. I slept with my shoes on and the covers over my head, swearing I could hear teeth clicking in the backyard, even though I knew that was ridiculous. Fear makes you hear shit. Nothing happened that night. No cops. No neighbors calling. No true crime twist. Just the hum of the fridge in my heart, loud enough to wake the dead. The next day, we drove to meet my dad at his warehouse. Warehouse makes it sound cinematic. It was a squat, ugly building that smelled like dust and forklifts, with a little living area upstairs where we'd eat leftovers and nap while he finished up. We lazed around up there until dusk. He came up, face pale in a way I'd never seen, and said we had to wait a bit to leave. "Police are here," he said, and that was new enough to pull us to the window. We peeked out the back window that overlooked the scrappy grass behind the loading docks. There were police clustered near the tree line, yellow light bouncing off their jackets. A white van sat half on, half off the grass near the woods, like it had tried to make up its mind and failed. The whole scene looked like TV turned down low. Dad led us past the window and back, his voice lower than usual. He hadn't heard about the night before. Mom hadn't told him yet. He kept staring at the van like it might stare back. "They found a man and a woman in that van," he said. The man had his mouth hanging wide open. I remember how disturbed he looked. My dad is not easily rattled, but something about it knocked him sideways. We asked about the woman. Was she okay? He wouldn't answer. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he did, and decided we didn't need those nightmares. I don't know. The only thing I know is that both were arrested for trespassing. That was the word I remember hearing, trespassing. As if being a nightmare parked by the woods with your jaw dangling wasn't a specific crime they could write down. We didn't ask more. Not then. We went home. The sun went down. The porch light did its faint halo thing. I lay in bed and stared at my ceiling fan, watching the blades carve the air into pieces. Years passed. The story settled into the silt at the bottom of my brain. My brother grew up and became an annoying medical student who thinks he knows everything about every organ. When I brought it up recently, hoping he'd remembered some detail I'd missed, he gave me a long lecture about possible medical conditions that could cause a dropped mandible, muscle laxity, drug-induced dystonia, blah blah science, thanks. He said it with that bored confidence of someone who didn't have a 7-year-old's view of a man standing in the dark with his face broken open. Sometimes I think maybe the guy didn't mean harm. Maybe he was drugged, lost, hungry, high, sick, all of it, none of it. But then my brain flips back to the way he followed us behind the houses, how he matched our turn off the sidewalk, how he ended up at my father's workplace the very next day, as if the world shrank and pulled him along like a bead on a string. World's safest neighborhood, people say. Safe is a story we tell ourselves so we'll sleep. There are cracks in every cul-de-sac big enough to swallow a kid whole. When I was a freshman, Alyssa was the girl. Perfect blowout, perfect eyeliner, perfect, don't even try me smile. She was a senior, and I was basically a baby deer on tile. I didn't talk to her, just watched her glide down the hall like a warning and a promise. I figured no one would ever see me the way I saw Alyssa. Bright, magnetic, untouchable. By senior year, I'd stopped trying to be invisible. I knew which hall monitor would let me sprint, which teacher would accept a pass scribbled in blue pen, where the heating vents made this weird music on cold days. I had my locker routine. Check it before first period, check it after fourth, swing back at the end of the day to grab cleats for field hockey. That rhythm saved my life, or at least my sanity, because it meant I noticed the first note. It was a small square of lined paper, folded twice. The handwriting was neat and plain, not bubbly, not hearts over the eyes, just simple, like someone who takes their time. It said, "You were beautiful in that dress on Friday." A small heart at the end. I stood there with the bell blaring and kids ramming past like shopping carts, and I felt heat creep up my neck. I wasn't used to being watched like that, admired, sure, in the mirror by me. But this felt specific. I tucked it in my pocket and went to class with my heart doing this stupid little dance. Then the notes kept coming, always after fourth period, always briefly sweet. Your smile lights up the hallway. You shine brighter than any star. Your homecoming photos are straight out of a magazine cover. So stunning. That kind of thing. Never my name. Never a signature. Compliments with a clean edge. I started timing my locker checks like a detective. Before fourth, empty. After fourth, note. Whoever it was knew my schedule. Knew where I'd be and when. My friends would have turned it into a circus if I told them. Stakeouts, fake-outs, hallway interrogations. So I kept it to myself. Also, I liked it. There, I said it. I liked the attention, the careful, almost old-fashioned tone. I pictured a shy underclassman girl, maybe someone who sat behind me in chem and noticed my nail polish, or a boy who couldn't meet my eyes but could write like this. I kept reading and folding and tucking away. Second semester hit, and my schedule shifted. My last class moved upstairs near my best friend's locker, and hers moved downstairs near mine, so we swapped. I didn't think about the notes for a while. Everything gets loud mid-year. College stuff, playoffs, senioritis. On the morning of my 18th birthday, my friend handed me a folded square. "This was in your locker," she said, frowning. "Inside, happy birthday, princess." For a second she thought it was meant for her. Any of those compliments could have fit her too. She's that kind of pretty that makes mirrors nervous. But birthdays don't lie. The color drained from her face, then came roaring back. "So what the hell is this?" she said, not in a gossipy way, protective, low, real. I told her the truth. The notes had been happening all year. I didn't want to make a big deal of it. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. They made it a big deal anyway. They love me. They're also nosy. Our friend, who had no fourth period, posted up by the lockers like a unionized gargoyle. She has this talent for being still, like a cat watching a window. We gave her a list of suspects. She rolled her eyes and told us to go to class. It worked. Not in some dramatic TV way. No sprinting, no shouting. Just observation. Our friend watched, and when the bell rang for fourth, and the hallway went thin and quiet, she saw who slipped the note into the narrow vent of my old locker. It wasn't a shy freshman. It wasn't a boy fumbling his first crush. It wasn't anyone we'd even considered. It was a janitor, an older woman. We all recognized her in that backdrop way. You see the same faces for 4 years, and they become part of the building. I don't think any of us had ever actually spoken to her. She cleaned silently, head down, earbuds sometimes in. She blended into the hum of fluorescent lights and squeaky wheels and lemon cleaner. Suddenly there she was, in our heads, holding a stack of folded squares. We didn't confront her. What would we say? Stop writing nice things. She hadn't done anything technically wrong. But the world shifted a notch to the left, and everything in it rattled. We started noticing more. She'd been to my last field hockey game, sat alone halfway up the stands. I'd only clocked her once, right before a corner, when the wind knifed across the turf, and I looked up and saw her watching me. I thought she was waiting for a kid to finish practice, or maybe she just wanted fresh air. Later, my friends found comments she'd left on public Facebook posts of mine. Harmless sounding stuff. "Great game, you looked so focused. Love that red dress, suits your complexion." Nothing gross, nothing overt. Just close. She knew details only people who study know. When I'd worn the dress, how many goals our forward had scored, the caption I'd changed 3 times before posting. Imagine finding out someone has been mapping your orbit and leaving chalk marks where you can't see them. I cycled through the phases, flattered, confused, creeped out, angry at myself for being flattered, angry at her for making me scared in a place where I should have felt safe. The halls felt different. The lockers did that tinny echo every time I shut the door, and it reminded me of a lid slamming on a box. I'd smell floor wax and think, she touched this. I'd see the gleam on a tile and picture her knees, her hands in thin gloves, scrubbing circles, thinking about me. My friends turned the dial from detective to bouncer. They walked me to my new locker after fourth. They waited near the bathroom. They watched the corners of the hall, where the beige meets the beige. We didn't tell a teacher. Maybe we should have, but we all knew how that goes. It's just compliments. It's not against the rules. She's an employee. Don't be dramatic. And we were seniors. We could stomach a lot if it meant avoiding a meeting where a vice principal would say, "Inappropriate conduct," like it's a hard candy. If you're thinking I'm overreacting, fine. Here's the thing, it is not the content alone. It's the surveillance. The way fourth period started to feel like a trapdoor. The way my birthday, which is supposed to be mine, had her handwriting in it before anyone else's. The way adult attention can feel like a hand on your head, gentle pressure that says, "Stay where I put you." For a while I carried the notes with me, folded and refolded until the edges went soft. Then I shoved them all in a shoebox and taped it shut because the paper felt like a mouth that might whisper if I walked by. I never responded. How could I? And after the stakeout, after my friends started orbiting tighter, the notes dwindled, then stopped. No confrontation. No apology. Just silence. Near the end of the year, I saw her again at a distance. She was cleaning the trophy case near the gym, slow and careful, lifting each plaque like it mattered. Her hands were steady. For a second I felt something gross, pity maybe, and then the cold came back. She looked up and our eyes almost met, and I turned away, hard enough to make my neck crack. All year I'd wanted to be seen. But not like that. Not by someone who could decide when and where to put a piece of me back into my life without asking. I graduated. The summer melted, college happened, new hallways, new problems.